I now call the March 27th meeting of the Wallingford-Swarthmore School Board to order. In opening, as you're willing and able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Right, I would like to start by asking Ms. Elias to please take the roll call.
Mrs. Dolay?
Here.
Dr. Grande?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mrs. Holbert?
Here.
Mr. Kudis?
Here.
Mrs. Vogt? Ms. Whitsett? Oh, she's clear. Ms. Wachowski Smith?
Here.
Mrs. Walkman?
Here.
We have 7 voting members here tonight.
Thank you. Right, we'll begin then with Ms. Sudarson, if you would please provide our student representatives report.
As the third marking period ends, everyone is scrambling to get in their last assignments and cramming for tests. Though the end of the quarter is always super rough, there were a lot of things earlier this month that helped us all chug along. The month started off with the Read Across America night at NPE. Teachers, administrators, and other special guests read to students who got to do activities and find new books that they might enjoy. The other elementary schools also celebrated by dressing up as their favorite characters and reading throughout the day. The high school theater department put on Grease. I try to go to as many performances as I can, but I was absolutely blown away by the talent in that show. I might be a little biased because most of the leads were my classmates, but Grease was my favorite SHHS production I've ever been to. You could say I was hopelessly devoted to it. The Speech and Debate team recently went to multiple district tournaments, and they won speech sweepstakes at one of them. These district tournaments acted as qualifiers for various national tournaments. 11 people qualified for the NCFL national tournament in Louisville, Kentucky, and 7 people qualified for the NSDA tournament in Phoenix, Arizona. In addition to all of these qualifiers, the district gave out a few special awards. Our awesome coach, Mr. Kahn, was named the District Coach of the Year, and the high school German teacher, Herr Paul, was the District Volunteer of the Year. I can't thank them enough for all that they've done for our team, and I'm thrilled that they were recognized. Many of these national qualifiers head over to the middle school once a week to coach middle school students. The middle schoolers are excited to share all that they've learned with the community at the first ever Strathaven Speech and Debate Showcase on April 20th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. The entrance fee is $5. Come to check out our program and help support our trips to nationals. Between International Night at SRS, Foreign Language Week at the high school, and the high school's International Night and the Assembly, the entire district spent a lot of time this month celebrating various cultures. Seniors Davani Lee and Ashna Pandey planned the entire event and put together an amazing, completely student-run assembly that celebrated all cultures. Students dressed in traditional clothing and performed dances, sang, and gave speeches in front of the entire school. The teachers also participated and performed in a Bollywood dance, which was absolutely hilarious. International Night featured many of these performers, in addition to displays about cultures and tons of food. If you weren't able to attend this year, make sure to be on the lookout for it next year. On Friday, the middle schoolers had the opportunity to explore various career paths during Career Day. Thanks to the parent and community volunteers, the students were able to see a glimpse into some of the opportunities their future holds. As a senior, I'm constantly flooded with questions about college and my future career, and it's all that's on my mind right now. I took a lot of AP classes this year for my college applications. However, as the process is coming to an end, I realized that I don't need to take some of the tests for the classes I signed up for. Many of my friends have already decided where they want to go next year, and they found out that many of the AP exams won't give them college credit. However, we're all stuck taking them, and we have to pay a good amount of money for them as well. I know many of my peers share the same sentiment that their AP exams are not worth the money this year. So I hope that the AP exam policy can be revisited and potentially revised for future senior classes. Although we've entered AP study season at the high school, I'm excited to finally just take a breath on Friday and relax during spring break.
Thank you, Supreja. Well-deserved, relaxing spring break as well. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that some of those invitations to nationals went to you as well. So congratulations very much on that. Thank you. All right, Dr. Mercier, we'll turn to you for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Brenda, congratulations. Thank you for sharing the accomplishments that have taken place, and we spoke about that. So thank you for highlighting the extraordinary experiences that we offer our students and our staff. So thank you. I did want to comment on the AP exam and understand the challenge that it poses to students. And I've always welcomed students who we hope we've created a safe and brave space for individuals to articulate what you are hearing, seeing, and experiencing. And as a result, our team will take a look at that AP exam policy. Want to learn more about the history of the district in terms of those particular requirements. I can estimate based on previous experiences, but I don't want to do that until I find out more the rationale behind those particular requirements. I think there's a number. AP honor roll is one of those College Board recognitions that a lot of districts chase. And in order to chase that, the more that take the exam, the higher your score is on a national ranking. I'm not saying that's the reason why we do it. I'm just sharing with you that there are a number of variables that speak to that, and whether or not students are going to take the course seriously. If you don't require them taking the AP exam, I haven't met too many AP students who don't take the course seriously. I'm sure they may exist. Never come across that. So I do want to thank you for sharing that, and we will take a look at that, and most likely we'll follow up with your classmates, with the high school, and eventually with the board in terms of our analysis. So thank you. I have a couple of updates. I'm excited because Dr. Tuck and her team are here tonight. So I'm going to run through this relatively quickly so that our staff and our wonderful students have a chance to share with you some of the great things that are happening. So I want to acknowledge a couple of items that are on the board agenda. Number one, customarily, the board would see financial statements and treasurer's reports. We wanted to give Mr. King some additional time to finalize those reports, as his first day was on March 6th, all you remember. So we're going to give him that grace that he needs as he is transitioning with the business department, and the board will receive those on April 24th. I also want to acknowledge another item that's on the agenda. I have put that the board, or at least the administration, will be recommending to the board awarding the contract for the King turf replacement to Field Turf. We shared with you that we had 4 co-star vendors who were licensed and prepped to be able to do this work. And 2 of those vendors presented proposal, Field Turf. And if that name does sound familiar to some of you, maybe it doesn't. Field Turf was the company that put the original turf onto the field. So we're going to ask the board recommend that project. As you know, the field has exceeded its useful life. It's exceeded its useful life purely on the sheer amount of use that field gets. And there has to be a long-term conversation about how we remediate that moving forward. We never had a long-term plan for what we're going to do with this field. There was a tremendous amount of excitement from the community who raised a significant amount of dollars, I believe over $700,000 to contribute to this turf. But we didn't put a system in place that would allow us to determine, hey, how are we putting money aside to ensure that? So part of this conversation that I want the board to think about, with I hope you approve the replacement of that, it needs to be replaced, is the question around what are we going to do to make sure we maintain it, that it stretches its useful life, and what plan do we have, because 10 to 12 years from now, we will be back here, which means that we need to put together a 10, 12-year plan so that the replacement will be able to afford that. And it's called long-term budgeting and planning, so that's important. The other thing I want to share with the board is there's a change order. And, I hate to use the term change order to some extent, but there are some changes to the way in which we're looking at our GIZA project, which is our Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. Part of the conversation is not what we've identified, that obviously we want to change the lights, right, to LED. The problem is the existing fixtures are inappropriate in terms of the length of time that they've been in this district. So if you can take a look up and you see these fixtures, to some extent, imagine you had this clear glass over it. That glass over 25 years has been stained significantly, that you have to replace them. Because if you don't, then you don't get the effect in which you are doing, which is part of a long-term plan, which is why we need a comprehensive facilities plan, because somewhere in our line item budget, we should have been calculating that it was going to cost the district X amount of dollars, because those plastic coverings do have a shelf life. They discolor and they become yellow. And when they become yellow, nothing can be seen through them regardless of the technology. So that's an $80,000 fix that we need to address. And once we invest in that, we'll be very clear in terms of how long is that shelf life, and are we prepared and planning financially for when they need to be replaced, but also in terms of taking care of them while they are there. The other thing I want to talk about is there's long awaited, and we've been talking about this for some time. Community members have been sharing this concern for a long time. Board members on the weekends who are tour guides on different campuses as they're walking, and everyone's asking them, where is this campus? Where's this location? Where's this room? I'm sure it's happened to others in the audience and who are watching. So we are getting finally directional signs and entrance signage on the middle school and high school property to mitigate what is a longstanding challenge in terms of when individuals come visit us. It's extremely difficult to locate what they are looking for. We're going to put those signages and the building signs up. I do want to say that this is not a Dr. Marseille thing. And apparently this district has been talking about signage because individuals produced for me quotes that went back many, 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 many years. I'm sure there was a reason why we didn't move forward with them. But now that I'm here, I think it's time to move forward with some of those signages, and I'm making that recommendation. We also, really interesting, I did not know about the Martha Burton Park and the township Northern Providence, who's had a lease agreement with the district. And there's some new and exciting things that they're looking to do in terms of funding. And part of that is the opportunity to renew that lease. So on the board approval, you'll find a recommendation to renew that lease for the extended period of time for the township. Even though it's ours, they're going to operate that for the next 20 plus years. I also want to talk about our strategic plan. We've had some really great meetings in terms of our vision for impact, where we asked the fundamental question who we were, who we are, and who we want to be. And based on the emerging pathways that we have identified, and it's amazing that at the last couple of meetings, the significant turnout. I want to say that, which I won't do again, I really underestimated our community in terms of who would really show up for this Zoom session on the 16th. We're going to have enough to divide into 5, 6 rooms, and it just kept coming. People just kept signing on, and we're really surprised. We didn't think, could we pull this off in the same authentic way that Dr. Conley and the rest of the team did in person, and pleasantly surprised, A, the sheer number of people who actually signed on, which was impressive, and B, that it worked really well in terms of the same way in the in-person model. So we're excited about that. We want to thank individuals for coming out. Friday, on 17th, our staff went through the same Vision for Impact exercise. So we're really happy that we're able to get this. I want to be very clear as we move into this. Nothing happens without our staff members leading this work. Nothing, right? So the conditions in the ground has to be good in order for them to do that. We need to be attentive to that they're on the ground. What is it we need to adjust and modify, as they're the ones who are really the boots on the ground individuals. So I'm excited about obviously their continued support and feedback. We have another session coming up on April 11th at MPE. There's another community session that we're working to find an exact date. And then additional work that will be done in April and May. Part of this work is really identifying a core group of community members. When I say this, I'm talking about the individuals who will roll up their sleeves, who come in with a tremendous amount of passion for this work, who come in with the time that is asked for, right? Because we want you to attend those sessions. They're not optional. It's extremely important that you are there. So we're going to give those dates as soon as possible for you to join the sessions. And that's the working team that's going to take everything we talked about and manifest that into very specific objectives, but then go back to those seminal documents, the communications audit, the curriculum audit, the special education plan, the comprehensive plan, and all the other documents we have, the equity audit, so that we align those objectives in a meaningful way so that we pace ourselves with this work, because it will take some time. Understand individuals are pushing for change now. This cry about how long, not long, but it does take some time. And we're gonna commit to that. This board is committed to that. Some of the things that need redirection didn't happen in a year or two. So we're gonna need opportunities to do that. So we do encourage you to go to that, use that QR code and express your interest, as we're trying to put together a really diverse and comprehensive team for each of those particular pathways. It's interesting to see certain pathways, you have 160 people, right? Other pathways, you have like 4, right? So we need to be able to figure out what's the best way, but I'm glad individuals were able to give their first, second, third, and fourth and fifth choice throughout that process. And Dr. Conley and his team are working to make sure it's a healthy team, anti-diverse team, in all sense of the word when I use that. Wanted to acknowledge NPE and the work that they're doing around STEM night and all the schools that, or STEAM, I should say. Can't forget the arts in that as well. So congratulations to the work that's happening there, work across the district. But I wanted to highlight that as we are reimagining what STEAM and STEM looks like and our commitment to that. Saprasia talked about this. It was absolutely spectacular for those who were there. Weaving Worlds, a night of customs, culture, and cuisine. For those who were there, I hope you had a taste of that. It was exciting. Some of the foods, different parts of the region, a little spicy, right? You had to be prepared for that. in terms of that, but it was really good to see our students perform and some of the parents who came in and wanted to share their piece of their culture with us. So that's exciting. Spring conferences, it's been, our principals have communicated that. We want to make sure we remind our parents of those particular conferences. Also, I know, and I know Mr. Frazier is going to talk about the national standing with speech and debate and the wonderful things, but I wanted to bring attention and at least acknowledge this, and she had shared some other items, but Alexa Brown took 5th place at indoor nationals in the shot put. She competed against the best athletes in the country. Only a handful of athletes qualified to participate in indoor nationals. And to be able to not just qualify, right? Because that's one thing, but to get there and actually compete is absolutely amazing. And speaking to her, we talked about the road it takes for that level of expertise. And she said, which I remember at nationals, and she said, you know, if I just had thrown my best throw, I would have been number 2, right? And I said, I said the same thing, but not number 2. I said the same thing when I got to nationals. If I just ran my time, right, I could have been top 8, right? But that wasn't the case. But she was really excited. Congratulations. Nationals are at Franklin Field, so you'll be able to go there at Penn. So it's a wonderful experience. I'm glad for her and all the athletes who continue to do wonderful things, all our students who continue to do that. And I know that there are certain moments where individuals strive to be at that pinnacle. But I do say that much of this is about the ability for this district to support the passions of our students, and how then we support our teachers who then are pushing and helping to support that. So congratulations to her. I also want to congratulate Gavin, who did a phenomenal job with swimming. There is no way, if you put me in the water, that any of that would ever happen with those times, unless I had a motorized device on me in terms of that process. So I want to congratulate him as well, and all the other athletes who really extended their season and did some phenomenal things. And if we came here and just gave an update on every single individual, would be here forever, because everyone recorded some tremendous personal performances throughout the year. Wanted to make some note of some district dates coming up. As you know, spring recess, so good time to exhale and take some time off, along with some other activities that are taking place. Our next series of committee meetings, we will start streaming our meetings after we get back from spring break. We hope that doesn't deter those individuals who've been coming in person. I think that's a big part of the meeting as well. So we encourage that, but we do know that you can be at your at home experiencing that. When's educational affairs?
Right.
Educational affairs is the 12th, not the 5th, because the 5th we're on spring break, right? So that is an incorrect date. So it is the 12th, and I should know that because that's the first meeting where we go live with the cameras, right? So with that, I wanted to give this public broadcast announcement around sportsmanship. Sportsmanship also is what happens in the stands. Sportsmanship is also what happens with adults in the way in which we model those particular behaviors. I always say, children are always watching. even when you believe they're not watching. All right. And having worked with children, you learn that very, very quickly. And then if you're fortunate and you have children, you want children, you realize, did you just hear that conversation? She's all the way down there, right? They hear and see everything. And I say that just to bring attention, and the Central League is highlighting this. So it's not just about what's going on, Dr. Marseille, did something happen? No, what I'm saying is I want to do our part as a community to spread about sportsmanship. And it's great to go out and compete. It's great to cheer for your team. We don't boo other teammates because they are our teammates in the sense, in terms of the scholastic piece. They might not wear the same uniform, but we are same level of commitment and desire to compete and to do well. We also need to recognize that not all of us in the audience are qualified. I know it's going to hurt some people watching this and listening to determine whether or not that was a foul or whether or not it was something different. I get it. You played in high school. I get it. You played in college. I get it. A handful of you extended your careers and you did it professionally. Get that too. I get a couple of you have performed at the largest athletic stages in the world. I understand that. We also have to understand that if you did do that, be mindful of the way in which you're engaging with our officials, the way you're engaging with other players. And I wanted to share that message as we roll into the spring season, and the Central League is making a stronger concerted effort to talk to all of our teams and to talk to all of our fans in the event to come out, enjoy the experience, but we can be respectful of each other, even in a defeat. All right, even in a defeat, we should do that as well. So with that, that concludes my my board report, and Ms. Walkman, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you, Dr. Marseille. In the interest of time, I know we might have some comments perhaps or questions for Dr. Marseille, but if we could hold those until later in the agenda so that we can get to our focus topic this evening. So would you like to introduce our focus topic, Dr.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to have, please, Dr. Tuck, you wanna, this is you. No one can do it like you, so. My apologies.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Share us the wonderful things happening in the short amount of time you have, because I know there's so many things happening at SRS, but we only give you like 10 minutes.
No worries at all. It's a good thing I forgot my notes at the school. But fortunately, a lot of it is already in my head. Thank you very much, Dr. Marseille and the school board members, for allowing us to share. How are the children? That's a question. How are the children? And I see from Alexa Brown and as well as Gavin Shiplet, former SRS students, they're doing well. So that's great. And I have two more SRS students, Lena and June, who will also share with you how they're feeling, how they're doing, and they're going to say that they're doing well also. Tonight, we have the opportunity to just share with you a few of the highlights from SRS. We started the year with back to school in person, which was a great experience for all of us. Our parents really enjoyed just having the opportunity to walk the halls of SRS once more. And then in October, we had our bike or roll to school. For those of you who have entered SRS and you've witnessed that I have a bike in my office, that's for those special days when we walk or we bike to school. So therefore, I'm always going to be prepared. And those are great experiences for us and also for our staff members because they also join us during those events. We had our Halloween and Fall Festival activities. We also had in November the Wall of Honor We honored individuals that have served in the 4 branches of the military. Students, they wrote special messages to their family members, thanking them for their service. We also had our winter concert as well as our winter holiday celebrations for all of our students. For MLK Day, our students at SRS, we participated, we had a play. We also had the Living Wax Museum as well as Tell Me a Story. So these are some of the events that our staff members have participated in, along with our cultural proficiency equity teacher leaders who have led that charge also. We just recently, last week, we had our 5th grade students. They visited the Swarthmore College. They had an environmental program at Crum Woods, and they had the opportunity to plant trees as well as shrubs and to experience the environment. I welcome you to come back and to visit us on April the 28th for our Arbor Day celebration, where all of our students will have the opportunity to visit Swarthmore College and to participate in the Arbor Day celebration. And I want to just share with you, in addition to the events that I just shared with you, we have our PBIS. And PBIS looks a little differently at every school, but we collaborate and we share some of the creative activities, ideas that will inspire our students to do their best. We want our children to do their best, to be healthy every day, and also to share in our community. And at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Tony Lorraine, they call him Mr. Tony at SRS, to come forth, and he's going to share with you some ideas from PBIS. And we have June and we have Lena who will also help us. And we have Mrs. McDonald who's going to close our presentation this evening.
Hi, how's everybody? Good. So PBIS, it's a state initiative that the districts are required to do. We've taken it a step further. We don't require it, we do it. We have fun with it. There's a lot, we're in a high achieving district, but the one thing that's really important that we talk about all the time is really having fun with the kids, giving them experiences, changing the culture. Having come from a lower economic district before here and an alternative behavior school before that, this works. This is one of the best things that the state has ever put out. It really does change the culture in the schools. So one of the things that we do with PBIS, what is PBIS? Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. For the people that know academics, MTSS, this is the behavior component to that. The good news is we have our MTSS person, Alyssa Mallison, that runs that. She's on tier 2. So when she goes to need meetings with parents and kids and teachers, she knows what's happening behaviorally and academically. So we've really mirrored that. Taking it a step further, one of the district's vision with equity, every one of our people on the equity committee serve on either tier 1 or tier 2. And what that does, a lot of people think when we talk about equity, we're talking about people of color, but we also look at it as regular ed, special ed, boys, girls, you name it. And so what they do is by the data that we put in, and I'll talk about in a second, we kind of look at it. Are we being equitable in what we're doing, how we're functioning as a group, how we're impacting the culture? Are we looking at everybody's lens and trying to assist that? And I feel like, this is my first year as the coach, taking over from Jonathan Blake, who's done a tremendous job. It is such a great experience. We have so much fun with this. It is made up of volunteers. Everybody that does it, except the coaches, are volunteers. And they do an unbelievable job. So tier 1 and tier 2, everybody in the school gets tier 1. If there's a Swiss referral, so if you have some minors, for example, you're disrupting the class by talking, and we notice a trend in that, we'll put it in. And we'll keep managing it. Eventually, when you hit a certain number, you'll go to tier 2. What tier 2 is very individualized. It's not on anybody's permanent record. It's not something, it is something merely to help us help the students. When it comes to the culture of the school, when we're talking be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. On April 18th, the tier 1 team last year got recognized by the state as being a tier 1 team. That's a big deal. So we're going again for it tier 1 and tier 2 April 18th. So as you know, we're hustling and making sure we have all the documents we need. But more than that, we're going to show it off. Dr. McCullough, Leslie, Dr. Tuck in the building level, they're all like coaches to us. So they all come in, and this goes with everything else that we're doing. We have really thrown a net over things and really incorporated everything else in the district. These are some of the things that Paul prints that the kids can earn: books, class game day, tickets to a sporting event. Class pizza party's the big one. That one of them is happening tomorrow. Kids make a point of telling me, Mr. Tony, I have pizza tomorrow. I know you do. Or Mr. Tony, can you please pick us? At which, no, I can't just pick you. You're a great kid. We pull them at the end of every month. There's gift cards. The biggest thing, and this was what they told us, special time with staff members. Our social workers stepped up. There's soccer with Miss Ashley. 3 different sets of kids have won. There's Dr. Tuck went overboard, as she always does when it comes to kids. She's doing lunch and again, out of her own pocket, lunch with a kid and 3 friends. And there's 8 winners of that. So that's 24 kids. And an interesting side note is one of our kids that was struggling behaviorally, he picked that as his reward, and he didn't even realize he was getting lunch. He just wanted time with Dr. Tuck. So, and anybody that knows Dr. Tuck, that's a pretty valuable thing, having time with her. One of the best people we know. So it just shows you the kids get so excited down the steps. My office would be over here. We've set out all of the things that the kids can win, and they get K to 5 so excited. So these are some of the things. Saying the Pledge of Allegiance, something as simple as that, sitting in a special chair at lunch. There's all different things. We've also taken a look at what we could do with the staff members and trying to help them. During PSSAs, we've set up a thing for chair massages. Teachers were able to sign up for that. We've done breakfast once a month, for our core teams, the people that volunteer, anything to get people excited about different things. We're coming up with more and more. The big one is the Dr. Tuck Golden Ticket. Everybody here has one on your table. If you turn it over, Dr. Tuck writes a letter to every kid on the back of their golden ticket. How do you get a golden ticket? You get a golden ticket based on, do you do the right thing consistently? Those kids that always do the right thing, or did you go above and beyond for somebody, for like a friend? They get nominated by their teachers, or Dr. Tuck sees it herself. She writes a note, the student comes down, Dr. Tuck, and it's not just about a reward. It's the intrinsic thing, the excitement. I'm successful in school. I'm doing well. It's not just the academics. It's also, this is a place I want to be. I want to come in. So that happens. They come down, and we have a bulletin board, which we're moving next year to the front of the building, and it has all the golden tickets up. And then at the end of the year, we're going to give them back, because I've had a lot of parents, do we get that back? Like, yeah, we'll give it back to you. It's one of those special things that you get in elementary school. Again, the Swiss is the system that we use to enter data. Again, it's not a punitive punishing thing. We look towards restorative practices, but we look at it in the lens of, okay, where's it happening? If we notice we're having hallway behaviors, we'll say, you know what, for this month, let's push out lessons to the hallway. Let's remind the kids what level 1 is in the hallway. And the students do such a great job with this. So the MTSS serves on tier 2. There's the golden tickets right there. And it is a huge thing. The kids, more than anything, probably the neatest thing is when the kid's excited for one of their friends. Oh, so-and-so got a golden ticket. It amazes me all the time how excited they are. Staff can win weekly parking spots. That's a big deal if you've been in the parking spot at SRS. Having that spot, that's a big one. Raffles, candy, clothing. We just did a candy bin where the staff had to guess how much candy was in it, and they got it. I was getting threats. I better win. It really went over well. 1 hour lunch. We talked about the massages, sports team clothing. Dr. Tuck has really incorporated the local sports teams. We've had pep rallies, just anything to get the kids excited about school. If we can find one thing to motivate them, get them excited, we got them. We educate and nurture the whole child. Anymore, if you're in education, you can't just come in and teach. It's not possible. That would be the one thing in grad school that they should make sure everybody understands. The kid sitting in front of you is dealing with stuff. It doesn't have to be a lot of stuff. It could be a little stuff. That's the stuff we've got to get at. I fortunately have probably the best job in the whole school, because just being with the kids and working with the kids, it's my absolute favorite thing to do. One of the things that has happened, and June and Lena are going to talk about this next, for the staff, Dr. Tuck, we go to faculty meetings, and just like you, on a smaller schedule, you're sitting there, you have stuff you have to get done. Dr. Tuck set it up. Jen McDonald's very versed in mindfulness. So we start our faculty meetings with mindfulness. It puts you in a good spot, especially if you're hearing something that's not so good. So Jen's going to end with that. I'm going to have June and Lena. June and Lena are the first we've ever had. We started a newspaper that goes home to the parents about PBIS so that they kind of know what's going on. June and Lena stepped in. Anybody that knows the two of them, they're two of the best kids we have, but two of the biggest personalities. So they go up to staff members or to students, and they ask them what they feel about PBIS. So we're getting that constant feedback. We take the paper, we look at it, we see what we can do to improve it. We're always looking to improve. Maybe we missed something. Maybe we thought we were doing something right. One of the things, we have the hearing impaired in our class, and we were making announcements at 3:15 at our school, the county. And one of our hearing impaired students said, I don't hear the announcements because we leave at 3:05. So we've changed the announcements to 3 o'clock. So it's just little things like that, making sure everybody feels a part of SRS and the SRS family. So June and Lena, come over here. They're a little nervous, but I'll tell you, they'll blow it out of the water. They're the stars. Come over here. They're going to read parts of their interview questions to you.
First we asked students and staff members their name and what grade they are in.
One of the first questions we ask is, what is your favorite reward in PBS? Meaning their raffles. Some of the favorites are the Amazon gift card. We also want to know what is their favorite one they want to earn. And for adults, it could be for them or for the students. And we ask, how many paw prints have you earned this year? But for the adults, we want to ask, how many paw prints have you given out? And then we ask, do you know the 3 Bs? Be safe, be respectful, and be responsible.
One of the other questions we ask are, what is their favorite subject? And for teachers, as we ask them what was their favorite subject to teach or when they were a kid. What is your favorite thing about SRS? And most of the responses say the students and the community. And do you have any questions about this?
That's good. They don't have any questions. That's a good thing.
Okay.
Before Jane starts, your golden ticket, you just want to give you the gift card. We're going to collect them with a $10 gift card, and whoever's we pull, you get a $10 Wawa gift card. You get one for Dr. Tuck.
Thank you, Tony. Good evening, board and Dr. Marseille. My name is Jen McDonald, and I'm a first grade teacher at SRS school. And I have had the luxury of teaching my colleagues and friends mindfulness this year. So what is mindfulness, you might be asking yourself? It is fundamentally just learning to pay attention on purpose. It's being present in the moment with kindness and gentle, without making any judgment, and being kind and gentle with yourself. With mindfulness, we can pay attention to what's going on around us. We can pay attention to what's going on in our bodies. And we can also pay attention to the thoughts and emotions that we're feeling. Mindfulness is a superpower, and everyone can do it. And at SRS, the teachers are doing it also. So mindfulness can not only help us when we're feeling those big emotions that come over us sometimes, but it can also help relieve symptoms of depression. It can identify, when you identify your feelings, something wonderful happens. It kind of takes the scariness away from them. So if you can name your emotion, mindfulness can help you with that. It can reduce anxiety and stress, and it can improve your memory. It can also make you think more clearly and flexibly. So how we have been using mindfulness at SRS, like Tony was saying, Every faculty meeting, which we have 2 a month, starts with a mindfulness lesson, but also with some mindfulness breath work too. We're also, some teachers are feeling very comfortable in their classroom teaching mindfulness. So there's a few of us that are doing it in our individual classrooms daily. Mindfulness was done with the 1st and 2nd grade students in our last week when we were doing our Asia study. The study this year was about India. And then today, this morning, the SRS Dimensions in Art Committee started and kicked off their 5th grade project. And that project is centered around mindfulness. So we started that kickoff with a mindful activity. And they promised me that they would start every art session with a mindfulness breath to start and a mindfulness breath to end. So what we're going to do, we are actually going to do that mindfulness that they did this afternoon. Okay, so let's give it a try. So the first thing that will help you or help us during mindfulness will be just to notice our bodies. So take a moment to see if you can make your body a bit more still. And if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes or you can let your gaze drop down to your lap. Does your body feel active or still right now? Are you tired or energized? Are you sore or are you okay? I just want you to take a minute just to notice what your body's feeling right now. Now let's just breathe normally like we usually breathe. Keep breathing like that and start to pay attention to your breath while you are breathing in and breathing out. You can start to take more slow, deep, quiet breaths now. You can put one hand in front of your mouth to feel the breath there. Now put one hand on your belly and take some slow, deep, quiet breaths. I want you to notice what happens to your belly when you breathe in and out. You can notice how it goes up and down or just in and out. When we are mindful of our breath, that's what we pay attention to. Every time we breathe in and out, we pay attention to the feelings we're feeling in our body. Let's try putting our hand on our chest. Maybe if you couldn't feel your breath in your belly or on your hand, maybe you can feel it there. Let's just explore some breath there. In just a moment, I'll ring the bell, and I want you to listen to the sound of the bell. And when you cannot hear the sound of the bell anymore, you can let your eyes open or bring your gaze back upward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Team SRS. Thank you very much, Lena and June, Mr. Tony, Mrs. McDonald. We thank you for just giving us this opportunity to let you know how are the children. They are well. It looks like Miss Winslet has won the, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tuck, and everyone from SRS. I wish I'd done the mindfulness this morning when I went to have my blood pressure taken. I tried, and it didn't work so well. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
That was really nice to hear the energy from Mr. Tony about the PBIS program too and how it's going. It was really great to hear.
Yeah. I would say, can I say that, Ms. Walkman, I want to say that I had the opportunity, and I'm a big supporter of mindfulness in my previous district. It was our standard practice K-8. And everyone participated, and we saw significant shifts in the way in which our students were able to self-regulate, the way in which they were identify how they were feeling. And it did really spread across the entire K-8 system. I had an opportunity, and when they talk about the idea about identifying how you're feeling, where you're feeling it, thinking about your breath, and the idea of helping to reduce anxiety. I had a meeting with the SRS staff, and a number of things that occurred where I had to share with them why those things occurred as it relates to the business office. And there were some conversations. I came in, I was really nervous, and I couldn't calm down. And prior to the meeting, I did not know this. They start this every meeting. They had a mindfulness moment. And I want to tell you that it is true in terms of your level of anxiety significantly reduces. And I felt much more comfortable and much more receptive as you're giving news that most people don't want to give in terms of that. So I really am supportive and encouraged to see so many of our educators who are sharing that experience with each other, with our students. And the level of commitment, other places we went all in because we needed that. And to the point where there were stipend positions for mindfulness coaches, because part of that is helping teachers walk through those particular lessons. And the more and more those teachers saw that, the better they were in order to facilitate that. And then we created, as a result of that, mindfulness spaces. So there were particular classrooms that were retrofitted in order to allow that to happen. So students were able to say, I need a mindfulness moment, and they were able to go to that classroom. And it was designed specifically to support that. I'd love to see that. We have to first get a lot of space in our buildings in order to do that. But I'm encouraged, and I'm happy that our team through the PBIS MTSS process has been supporting this, and it's getting larger and larger. So I want to echo that and give a personal reference to it.
That's fantastic. I know there's other teachers, there are other teachers in the district that practice it within their classrooms. And we talked about that in back to school night in some of the classes I went to. So certainly support for it. All right, with that, we'll move on then in our agenda. And so that takes us to board announcements. The board did meet this evening in executive session to discuss personnel matters. With that, then we go to audience recognition. So this is our opportunity for response to actions for items for action on the agenda this evening. The time for there's a time later in the agenda for items that are not on tonight's agenda for action. Let's see. It's a time for us to listen and hear perspectives and experiences from our community. And while we can't answer questions at the meeting, there's always an opportunity for follow-up after the meeting if there's a specific question for the district. And because we want to give as many people as possible that wish to speak a chance to be heard, we will follow our 3-minute time limit, and we'll give anyone a heads up at that 1-minute mark. And so is there anyone this evening that would like to speak about a topic that is on the agenda for action this evening? See none. That was a long intro, despite not having anyone. All right. Seeing none, then we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the minutes. The minutes of the February 27th, 2023 regular school board meeting. Do I have a motion? Ms. Whitsitt? Is that Ms. Whitsitt? Yes. Thank you, Ms. Whitsitt. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Dr. Grande. Any questions or comments? Okay, with that, Ms. Elias, if we do please take the roll call.
Dr. Grande?
Aye.
Mr. Henry?
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert?
Aye.
Mr. Kudis?
Aye.
Mrs. Dolay?
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt?
Aye.
Ms. Whitsett?
Aye.
Ms. Wachowski-Smith?
Aye.
And Mrs. Walkman?
Aye.
The minutes pass 9-0.
Ms. Walkman, just so the record shows that we're keeping a record. Ms. Whitsett did arrive after the roll call this evening.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have our committee reports. We'll begin with the Educational Affairs Committee. Ms. Witkowski-Smith.
Yes, I have the summary of the meeting that was held on March 1st at 7 p.m. At Strathaven Middle School. School board committee members are Ms. Witkowski-Smith, Ms. Christine Dole, Mr. Kevin Henry, Ms. Nanette Whitsett, Ms. Kelly Walkman, and Mrs. Rachel Holbert. The administrative committee members, Dr. Marseille, Dr. Conley, Dr. Pratt, Mr. Benzing, Dr. Sandberg, Dr. McCullough, and Ms. Shad. Administrative presenters were Dr. Megan McCullough, Dr. Ian Sandberg, and Ms. Leslie Shad. Teacher presenters were very interested, and it was good to hear about our gifted program from Mr. DeJong and Mr. Mendel. School board committee members present, Ms. Christine Dole, Mr. Kevin Henry, Ms. Kelly Walkman, Ms. Nanette Whitsett, and Ms. Wendy Vogt. So the role of the committee is dedicated to ensuring high quality and innovative educational programs for all students. Our goal is to provide our students with rigorous, diverse, and engaging K-12 learning experience based on data, research, national state standards with a focus on equity. We explore and review current and new curricular frameworks and pedagogical practices that support the district's long-term mission and vision. On March 1st, 2023, the Educational Affairs Committee had 3 presentations were on the agenda, all of which came from the Office of Student Services following roll call. Dr. Sandberg presented alongside gifted teachers, Mr. Mark DeJong and Mr. Dave Mendel, on the district's gifted programming. Ms. Shad presented to the committee Chapter 339 and the district's obligations under the PA career and work standards requirements. Finally, Dr. McCullough presented to the committee on the district's behavioral health vertical teaming initiatives. Presenters took questions from the board as well as the community members in attendance. The next Educational Affairs Committee meeting will be held in room B226, Strathaven Middle School on April 12th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Witkowski-Smith.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Whitsett. Just a reminder that that will be our first televised committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Finance and Facilities, Dr. Grande.
Yes, the Facilities and Finance Committees met on March 15th. I'll give you my summary of the summary. And the summaries, I'll remind everyone, are posted online, so you can look those up as well. So the Facilities Committee took the bulk of the time on March 15th. We discussed a number of issues, including a couple that are on the agenda for this evening. One in particular is the replacement of the turf on King Field, which Dr. Marseille mentioned. At the time the committee met, we were waiting for bids. We got those bids, and now we'll be voting this evening. ELA, who's our contractor who was working with us on our turf replacement plans, as well as our athletic field study, was in attendance and presented at that meeting. They also discussed their work thus far on the athletic field study, which is ongoing. There has been a number of community opportunities for input, and they will be synthesizing that work over the coming month. The output of that process will be a long-term plan for the district, which isn't about everything we're going to do in the next year, but really laying out a comprehensive multi-year plan as we look to both make improvements to our athletic fields, but also come up with plans around sustainability around our fields and usage. We also discussed a couple other items on the agenda this evening, which are the marquee signs at the middle school and the high school, as well as campus signage, which are desperately needed. And then lastly, the Facilities Committee discussed the RFP for our custodial cleaning services. Then we shifted gears into finance, relatively brief finance committee meeting. That evening, Mr. Ken King was introduced as our interim business manager. At that point, I think he'd been on the job like 8 days or something like that. So most of the discussion that evening was around his initial efforts around getting the business office staffed up and his sort of initial deep dive into the work. And then the evening was adjourned. So that is my report.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. Next up, we have policy, Ms. Holbrook.
Okay, thank you. Since our last board meeting, we actually had two policy committee meetings. The first one held on March 9th was our February meeting that got pushed back. At the March 9th meeting, we discussed 6 policies, all first readings. And that discussion started with policy 206. And it might seem odd, but given that policy 206, attendance areas and assignment in district, has been extensively rewritten, it was again being considered as a first reading that night. I just want to highlight that perhaps most importantly, the new policy 206 makes clear that initial priority will be given to students entering elementary school to remain in that school if they have older siblings in that school. So I did want to make that clear. After 206, we turn to policy 200, enrollment of students, which outlines the documents that the district must receive from new families in order to establish proof of the student's age, residency, and immunizations. We then considered policy 201, admissions of students, which works with policy 200 and outlines the process to be followed by families wishing to seek early admission of their children to first grade. The next policy was policy 211, student accident insurance. This policy was rewritten to more clearly detail the insurance that is in place for all students who take part in athletics. This includes band members as well. This insurance is a standard insurance policy that districts have in place and is authorized by Section 511 of the school code. Next was policy 219, the student complaint process, which was rewritten to more clearly define student complaint and provide the opportunity to delineate the steps required to file a complaint in the administrative regulation. Finally, that evening, we considered policy 815, acceptable use of technology. This policy has not been updated since 2010 and needed extensive revision. The policy indicates how the district technology is expected to be utilized by its users. 2 main points that are made in the policy is that first, no one using the district technology should have any expectations of privacy in their communications on that technology. And second, families accepting a district issued device like a Chromebook agree that students' use of the device shall be in accordance with that policy. Whew. Okay, so that was what we covered on March 9th. Less than 2 weeks later, we were back for the March meeting on the 22nd. However, none of the policies considered in the first reading could be considered for second readings because they have to go through, they need to have a full school board meeting in between, so that's today. So we have to allow for full consideration. Guess that's democracy in action there. So on to March 22nd, where we added 3 new policies to the first readings. The first one was policy 202, eligibility of non-resident students. This policy outlines the categories of students who might be considered non-residents but can still attend school in our district. Most of these categories are required by law. We do have, we also allow for future and former residents to be eligible in a few specific cases, like seniors finishing out their senior year. Let's see, policy 246, student wellness is a policy that's largely required by the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act and is quite extensive in relation to nutrition and physical activity. It also requires each district to have a wellness committee, which apparently also discussed this policy. Finally, policy 823, naloxone, permits naloxone to be stored and administered by trained district officials. Naloxone is most often known by the brand name Narcan, and it reverses opioid overdoses. I will just say that it is about time Narcan became available at our district, and we had a quite good discussion about that. So all of our policies were first readings. We will be considering all of these for second readings at our next policy committee meeting on Wednesday, April 26th at 7 o'clock. Hope to see you there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Olbert. The next item that we have in this list is actually the Wellness Advisory Committee that you just mentioned in relation to the policy, and I don't believe that the committee met. Okay, I believe we talked about the by policy. I think the committee meets 3 times a year. Yeah. That takes us then to the Pennsylvania School Board Association. Back to you, Ms. Witkowski-Smith.
So, Pennsylvania School Boards Association, their most recent brief from March. These are excerpts that might be of interest to our district community. So larger than expected numbers of students in the state of Pennsylvania are contacting the Safe to Say program to ask for mental health treatment and resources for themselves or other students. District Attorney Michelle Henry told senators Thursday in discussing her office's request for more funding in next year's budget. Ms. Henry is asking for a 17% increase in funding, especially for the Safe to Say program, and to hire 2 additional analysts at the state level, as well as to cover some technology needs for schools. So it is a program that seems to be working across the state. In his latest stop on a tour to talk up his first state budget, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro told Pittsburgh Public School staff on Tuesday that he was working to get them more support. Shapiro included a tax incentive program in the spending plan that he released earlier this month that, if approved, new teachers, nurses, and police officers would receive personal income tax credit worth as much as $2,500 a year for up to 3 years for working in what Shapiro called frontline trades. High schoolers could soon take on the role of teachers through a new program that will allow students to explore possible careers in education while giving them classroom experience. The K-12 teacher education course would be implemented at participating school districts as early as next year. They assure us that high school students will not be teaching those classes independently. Girls wrestling is on the cusp of being sanctioned by PIAA. Last month, Sanction PA formally applied to the PIAA, which governs high school sports in the Commonwealth, to officially sanction girls wrestling. An affirmative vote at February 22 board meeting brought the goal closer to reality. 2 more positive votes are still required, however, before an official ruling can be made. Thank you, and that is the report from PSBA.
Thank you very much. Next, Delaware County Community College, Ms. Witczak.
There are 2 things that are on the agenda tonight for approval, and I mentioned them at the last board meeting, that the appointment of Shelley Hunt as with the term of Delaware County Community College trustee Elizabeth Bay Shepherd expired June 30th, 2023. Ms. Rabadon has requested reappointment to a new 6-year term. According to the sponsoring agreement, the responsibility for selecting reappointing the college trustees lies with the sponsoring school district. This memo serves as my request for each liaison committee member to support this reappointment. I would appreciate it if you would propose the resolution for action at the next school board meeting, and it's on the agenda for tonight.
According to the sponsor agreement, the responsibility for selecting college trustees lies with the sponsoring school districts. The established procedure charges the liaison committee with screening trustee candidates and then forwarding its recommendation to sponsoring school districts for consideration. Approval requires an affirmative majority vote of sponsoring school districts. The liaison committee received complete applications for 8 candidates and conducted with 7 of these individuals, interviews with 7 of these interviews. As a result of the process, the committee has chosen to recommend the appointment of Katrina Robinson to fill the term which runs through June 2028. The liaison committee requests that you propose the attached resolution for action at the next regular school board meeting, and it's on the agenda for this evening. And that's the 2 reports from Delaware County Community Liaison Committee.
Thank you. Mr. Kudis, the Delaware County Intermediate Unit.
The Delaware County Intermediate Unit Board, of which I'm a member, met the first Wednesday of the month. We approved the budgets for the general fund and the Delaware County Technical Schools, for which we will be voting on tonight. We are also electing 5 members of the board tonight from other school districts. They are all incumbents. I have served with them, and I would recommend that we vote in favor of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kudis. And finally, Delaware County School Board Legislative Council, Mrs. Holbert.
The Legislative Council met earlier this month and discussed the governor's budget, and we were given reports about the Senate Education Committee session about statewide teacher shortage and other issues. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Holbert. Right, that takes us to personnel. We have 10 items for action under personnel. Are there any items that any member of the board would like to separate from the others? Okay, seeing none. First up, we have resignations as stipulated in the agenda. We have appointments as stipulated, leaves of absence as stipulated. Item D, 2022-2023 conference requests as attached. We have 2022-2023 curriculum supplementals also as attached. We have the 2022-2023 activities supplementals as attached. 2022-2023 spring athletic curriculum supplementals also as attached. 2022-2023 activities advisor appointments as attached. 2022 summer school transportation also as attached. Summer 2022 base hours. Item J, changes of hours, ratifying and approving changes of hours as attached. And that concludes that section. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Oh, that was close. I heard Mrs. Holbert first. And a second? Second. Oh. She beat you to it. I will give it to Ms. Witkowski Smith. Do we have any questions or comments on this section? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Elias, if you'd please take the roll call vote.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert.
Aye.
Mr. Kudis.
Aye.
Mrs. Dolay.
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt. Ms. Witsat.
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Grande.
Aye.
And Mrs. Wolfman.
Aye.
Personnel items A through J passes 9-0.
Thank you. Then in policy, we have 9 policies for first reading this evening. Policy 200, enrollment of students. Policy 201, admission of students. Policy 202, eligibility of non-resident students. Policy 206, attendance areas and assignment in district. Policy 211, student accident insurance. Policy 219, complaint process. Policy 246, student wellness. Policy 815, acceptable use of networks, internet, computing resources, and CIPA, internet safety compliance. And policy 823, naloxone. Are there any of these that anyone on the board would like to separate from the rest? Seeing none, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Second? Second.
There's not a vote, they're not a voting on it. They're informational.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, first reading. Thank you.
Yeah,
Right there.
yeah, have it.
Okay.
Muscle memory.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or comments about these? I'll just comment to echo Mrs. Holbert, which you had shared at the beginning, or sorry, during your report with respect to policy 206. Policy 206 has received a lot of comment and attention. We've had some really robust conversations in the committee meetings and got some excellent feedback from our community about concerns with the policy as it had been edited. We've incorporated, I think that the committee has done I think a very good job of incorporating that community feedback, and I thank the administration for helping us to incorporate that feedback. I really encourage folks to read all of the policies, but in particular that one, to make sure that we haven't in fact incorporated that feedback in the manner in which the community intended. So we will be talking about it again and bringing it back for a second read and a vote a month from now. Any other comments or questions on these? I'm sorry, Dr. Grundy, sorry.
I just wanted to say kudos to the district and to the committee for moving forward on getting naloxone in the district. And so thank you for that.
All right, we'll move then to curriculum. We have two items for action in curriculum. First up, we have the 2022-2023 category 1A field trips. And second, we have an amended 2022-2023 calendar. May I have a motion for approval?
So
Mr. Henry, and a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Witkowski-Smith. Comments or questions? Dr. Marseille, you are ready.
Yeah, I had a comment. I just wanted to, I saw some board members ready to click, but before they did that, I just wanted to share that these are modifications and not significant changes to the calendar. With additional eyes, we noticed that there were some conferences that were not identified that we need to put on the calendar. Also know that though there was a legend that identified Act 80 days, it wasn't a very clear legend for those who didn't know what the peripheral lines were. I think administrators knew what they were. Want to publicly say that there are not significant changes to the calendar. They were somewhat bringing awareness to some of the things that were there or some of the dates that we had missed in terms of conferences.
Thank you, Dr. Marseille. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. With that, Ms. Elias, if you please take the roll call vote.
Mr. Kudos,
Aye.
Mrs. Dolay,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt, Ms. Witset,
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski-Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert. Aye. And Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
Curriculum items A and B passes 9-0.
Thank you. Next up in student services, we have two items for action. Would anyone like to separate one of those items from the other? Seeing none. First, we have an educational services agreement as attached and a homebound instruction request for approval of homebound instruction for two students, also as stipulated. May I have a motion? I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Vogt. May I have a second, please? Second. Thanks, Ms. Witkowski-Smith. Any questions or comments? All right, Ms. Elias, roll call vote again, please.
Mrs. Dolay,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt, Ms. Witset. Aye. Ms. Witkowski-Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert. Aye. Mr. Kudas.
Aye.
And Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
Student services items A through B passes 9-0.
Thank you. All right, next up is finance, and if I counted correctly, I believe we have. I think I wrote 11 items for action. Is there anything in this section that anyone would like to separate from the rest?
Subject D, King Fields synthetic turf replacement.
Okay,
And also item Q, please.
item Q. And are these just? Do we have questions on them that might impact the voting decision, or? Just to be sure that. If it's a question that won't impact the vote, we can take that at the point that we ask for questions. If it may impact the vote, then it would be appropriate to separate them.
It will.
Okay. Okay, all right.
What affects your vote? I'm sorry, can you repeat what the vote?
B.
And what will Ms. Dolly affect your vote?
Q. Item Q. All right, so I'm going to then ask for a motion of the following items. Item A, C, D, F. I didn't read these yet. Yes, okay, so hold on. I'm gonna go backwards. Item A is bills paid to vendors for February 18th, 2023 through March 19th, 2023. Item C is the GISA project change order that Dr. Mercé discussed in his superintendent's report, as is item D, directory and entrance signage. Item E, the contract with For the Love of Black Girls. Item F, the contract with Ben Hartranft for K-8 student assemblies. Item G, contract with JMW Entertainment Group for the 8th grade dance. Item H, contract also with JMW Entertainment Group for the Frosh dance. Item I, contract with Event Medical Staffing Solutions. Item J, contract renewal with Whistler Pearlstein LLP. Item K, Martha Burton Park lease and license agreement. Item L, the 2023-2024 Delaware County Intermediate Unit General Operating Budget. Item item M, 2023-2024 Delaware County Technical Schools Budget. Item N, the 2023-2024 Delaware County Intermediate Unit Special Education Funding and Service Agreement. Item O, E-rate Verizon FiOS renewal. Item P, the Barksdale contract. And that we'll take all of those up together. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Kudos. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. Any questions or comments on these?
One comment.
Mr. Henry?
Thank you. On item D, directory, entrance signage, I just want to make a comment as our superintendent discussed earlier. This had been discussed for years and years and years. I just wanted everyone to know that the spend, the $50,000 is within the budget. This has been budgeted for a while, and we're finally getting it done. So thank you for finally getting it done. That's it.
I may just add, it also includes some prior class donations that are long overdue for spending that were committed specifically for that purpose.
Mr. Lee?
Also regarding items G and H, so the contracts for the 8th grade dance and the Frosh dance. So there seem to be questions regarding why these individual contracts are now requiring approval, and I was wondering if Dr. Mercé, you could speak to that at this point.
Sure, because all contracts are to go through the board and they were not being processed in the meaningful way. So individuals are expediting services, but we're not being, administration central office was not aware of those contracts. And we wanted to make sure that moving forward, until we think differently about what will the board allow to move forward with, that individuals on the ground floor should be following a process where they are talking to the principal. they're facilitating that conversation with a director that goes to the assistant superintendent, that goes through my office and then shared with the board. There were some gaps in that process.
I believe I've seen some of those questions as well in the community, and I had actually looked that up as well. And I believe under the Pennsylvania, under the, the educational code section of the statute.
Yeah,
that it's
the
required.
school code speaks very specifically to a requirement that any contract over $100 has to be approved by the board.
And can I just ask a quick follow-up to that? So this is a contract that with it is, this is for a dance that occurs on school property. And that's what makes it a contract that like we have to sign, even though the HSA pays for it. Is that how that works, or?
There are student funds that pay for that, so they raise the money to support that. Yes, that is correct.
But it's because it's here, we're.
Not necessarily. There are events that is school sponsored that happen off-site. The prom doesn't happen here and it happens off-site, but
But there will be
if
a
you're-
contract for that.
if you're entering into an agreement, that has to take place.
So I mean, at the end of the day, the contract is with the school district. The
Right, that's
responsibility
correct.
sits with the
I
school district.
I
at the end of
had
the day.
not heard that the HSA was paying for this. As a matter of fact, I understood there were student funds that were involved as well. But if whoever is paying for it, ultimately, the district is the one that's actually on the hook for this. And so it's a district contract.
I want to say I appreciate to some extent history in this district. I'm trying to appreciate that there were times where people wanted to expedite things because it worked really well. Whether central office was failing to process information, whether it took a long time in order to do that, that has not been practice that I am accustomed to. And when brought to my attention, it does put the district and this board in harm's way when we are not familiar with. What will happen differently with this board so that we're not proving every single things at these meetings is we will present to you in August all the significant contracts and all the repeating contracts that are being navigated and explored. So you are aware of those. We ask that we will work with our staff to expedite those and not delay that conversation. There's items where the board ratifies, right? And we say, hey, can we move forward with this? And there's not significant challenge. And we ask you to vote on those as they are aligned to our core work and our strategic plan, and they're part of a line item budget that's there. The same way signage, there's line item budget for particular projects that's identified in the operations budget. So yes, it is there. Once we start exceeding those numbers and it hasn't been budgeted for, we can't shift dollars around. Yes, we're gonna have to ask permission for the board to spend new money because that wasn't really articulated in that sense. The same way, if there was a surprise event that somehow we need a new roof and we had no idea about it and we didn't budget that process, we'd have to go find the money in order to do that. We would bring that to the board. I do know that that came up as part of our conversations with staff. Why is this being held up? It's never happened before. What's going on? Well, there's lots of things that haven't happened before that probably should not have been happening. And one of those is, let's get the process started a lot earlier. We will inform the board of that. And since in previous places, the summer was a time for the board to approve a significant amount of pending contracts so that we don't hold anything up in that particular lens.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And again, we can, we'll also be in compliance with what is in the, in statute, by moving through a process as you described. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, so we're going to then take the roll call vote on all items in this particular section with the exception of item B and item Q. Ms. Elias. Sorry.
Mrs. Vogt. Ms. Witset.
Aye.
Ms. Wachowski Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Grande.
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert.
Aye.
Mr. Kudas.
Aye.
Mrs. Dolay.
Aye.
And Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
Finance items pass 9-0.
All right, let's take the two items that we separated separately then. So the first one is item B, Kingfield synthetic turf replacement. Do I have a motion for approval? Ms. Vogt, thank you. And do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Henry, thank you. Questions and comments? Anyone want to, Ms. Whitsett, did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have,
Unfortunately, I was not at the March 15 faculty's meeting. So I was unable to voice my concerns and questions. So I want to express some of them tonight in reference to the artificial turf. First of all, it's grass is made from petroleum and old tires. Think of all the wicked chemicals and greenhouse gas emissions associated with manufacturing those products. It's bad for our climate, and climate change is real. Second, there are health concerns. Besides skidding on the fake grass and getting turf burns, the fake blades and black crumbs that hold them together routinely break down. The particles become airborne and are inhaled, bad for our respiratory health. And there has been studies that the introduction into the respiratory system and then to the nervous system, it has been associated with brain cancer. And last, the artificial grass heats up the surrounding environment. The fake grass gathers and emits as much heat as black asphalt, a terrible effect considering our collective effort to reduce exponentially rising temperatures. I know that the company has said that the PFSAs are minimum and that it holds no risk to the student athletes, but not only does it pose a risk to them playing on it, because the turf actually heats up the playing field temperature to as much as 93 degrees Celsius, 93 Celsius and 200 Fahrenheit. The National League banned the use of artificial turf because of injuries, and the national soccer team will only play on national grass for the same reason. The PSAs can be ingested and inhaled and absorbed through skin and even enter the body through open wounds. And that they have a chemical which called forever chemical. And because they don't naturally break down or lead to cancer, liver problems, thyroid issues, birth defects, kidney disease, decreased immunity, and other serious health problems. I know that the use of natural gas is more expensive for the district to consider, but I just want, us to really take a look at the environmental issues because of the padding that's underneath the turf, that increases the density of water runoff because it doesn't allow the earth to process the water. So it can increase flooding in the areas and water runoff and drainage. And it's just bad for our natural habitat because the soil no longer absorbs CO2 or stormwater. So I'm just asking that before we vote yes for this, that we consider some of the environmental issues and health issues that can affect our athletes as they grow older. So they play for 4 years on this turf. And then when they go to college, they all of a sudden have liver problems, thyroid issues, and it's no study that says that it's a direct link, but there is studies that say it's a direct link. So I'm just asking that we consider these issues about the turf and before we take a vote to put the contract to. And besides, it's a big amount of money that we're using that could be used for other areas of our strategic planning process.
Thank you, Ms. Woodsett. Any other questions, comments? Dr.
I'll just comment. I appreciate, the comments from Ms. Woodsett. I will say that it's important that we create opportunities for our students to be active, to compete. And we don't have a lot of space in this district to create that opportunity. And while it would be wonderful if we had a way to create really fantastic natural grass fields that we could rotate teams in and off of, shut them down when it rains and all those kinds of things, the reality is that's not our situation in the district. And if we were to try to convert King Field to a natural grass field, it would be closed an awful lot and it would have to be used a whole lot less, like a whole lot less than it is currently used. And so we would have to dramatically decrease the amount of opportunities, not just for student athletes, but also certain community usage of the field as well. It remains one of the only places in the district, which is why it gets overused. So we've been overusing it even in the circumstances where we have an artificial turf field, and you would have to dramatically reduce that usage, and we don't have a lot of other options for our students and our community. And I think the reality of the situation is that it's time to replace the turf. It's at the end of its useful life, and I support moving forward with doing so and creating the opportunities for our youth to be active.
Thank you, Dr. Gondry.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment because I'm also supportive of this amendment or this motion. It's a significant amount of money. We've been talking about our options endlessly for quite a while now. The King Field is well beyond its useful life, so it's not just netted. It's, I think David agrees, well beyond. And one of the reasons that the amount is so significant is that the district did not have a plan that the superintendent earlier mentioned that we would need to have going forward after we replace the field. We will need to have a plan in place, a long-term plan, which I appreciate Dr. Marseille recognizing that when we're going to put this new field in place, we already have to start planning 10, 12 years in advance for replacement of it. So it's a significant amount of money. I agree with Dr. Grande. I think there's, not only do I want to create those opportunities for our student athletes and our community members, but our marching band as well. And I want it done correctly. I want the replacement to be done correctly. We've looked at the proposals. We've gone through them endlessly. We talked to the community about it quite a bit. And the work is substantial and professional, and I want it done correctly so that we can enjoy it. Our kids can enjoy it, marching band can enjoy it. So I am supportive of this replacement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Ms. Dole?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I thank you for sharing that, because I do share that concern, and it's a tough one. You know, and months ago I had asked about a more sustainable option, and the response was that we couldn't afford natural grass, and that's understood. I feel like we're in a really tough spot here because we have a field that really is becoming unusable because of its condition, and I feel like the decision has to be made now. You know, the response at that time with regards to health was that the consulting company would recommend the best product that's safe for our students. And so in following up on that, we did get some information that speaks to that, which does make me feel a little bit better. But I do hope this is a different conversation in 8 to 10 years' time. I hope the technology is better. I hope it's more affordable. You know, that there will be options that are sustainable, that are within our reach. That's my hope. And I'm also, you know, encouraged to hear that we're talking about how are we going to budget for that, because it is a large sum of money to have to just shell out at the snap of a finger. So, but I struggle with it as well. It feels like we're stuck right now.
I'd just make one other comment, which is that, you know, one of the, you know, as we put together a comprehensive plan for facilities and athletic fields in the district, again, as we mentioned earlier, that's a long-term plan, and part of that will need to be community engagement. I know the administration has a plan in place to build an advisory group that partners with the community, and will need to look into development, not to build things, development, like bring in some money. So fundraising, I should say, around some of our future needs around athletic facilities. So I look forward to embarking on that work in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. I was going to mention the same that, you know, we did hear some feedback in some of the public meetings around why not have approached some fundraising for this. And number one, it is unfortunately one of those situations in which you really do need to act now to be able to safely use the field come the fall. And two, stay tuned. That's coming. A very comprehensive plan that will take into consideration, as Dr. Grande said, all of our fields, but also be aligned with the entire strategic planning process. So I know that's on the docket moving forward as well. Did you?
No, but, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, so, you know, I wasn't here when this community came together and shared there was a need. They identified that need. And in order to maximize space, in order to provide more opportunity, that the turf field could be a viable option with respects to the limited number of fields that exist and the sheer number of programming that we offer to our students. It is irrefutable with respects to, if that wasn't there, the number of grass fields we would need in order to accommodate the use of them. I have shared in this community, with this community, since I have been superintendent, there's not one day that that field is not being used. Every Saturday, every Sunday. My colleagues who join me on those weekend work sessions can attest to the fact that there's someone on there all the time. And the ability to use it year round affords that level of experience. I am not familiar with the analysis that Ms. Wissett described. I'm interested and would love to dive into those particular reports. We did receive some communication from a community member who said, hey, there's some recent concerns. And I appreciated them providing those links, read those and went and did some additional analysis. Some of the things you stated were new to me. I'd like to hear more about where that is embedded. I do know that the two organizations that are recognized for putting turf and replacing turf did provide the district with information with regards to the use of PFAS, and that is not a product that is being used to manufacture the field. I don't know about the other conditions that were addressed. I'm not familiar with, but looking to be interested in terms of the environmental impact, in terms of the temperature of the turf and how it heats up. But I also want to share that we do have to have a conversation about our fields. And quite honestly, I'm a proponent for another turf field in light of the usage. Though that may be something far down the future with, I hope this board or another board, but I want to tell you that when we put together this 5 to 10 year plan, and I hope it's a collaboration with our township as well and others. I'm looking forward to my meeting with Dr. Smith, the president of the college. And I'd love to think differently about, since we're neighbors, how can we utilize and support each other more? We have a significant need. We'd like to be able to see what are they willing to do to support that need. And that's just not on, on the athletic playing field as well. We share that we have a strategic plan that focuses on a number of core pathways that the college is significantly looking at those same pathways. So I do think there are opportunities to collaborate. I mean, some of our students do go directly across the street after graduation. We're only as good as our next door neighbor. So I do think that there's opportunities there. But for me, I understand some of the concerns. We addressed at least one of those in terms of, does field turf use those chemicals in its production? And they do not. That was identified to us. So I bring the recommendation to this board because I think it's the best recommendation that we have today, moving forward. And I will bring you another recommendation years from now about fields, and then we'll talk about that later, but we'll do that. I hear you, Mr. Henry, one at a time. I just want to let you know I'm putting out there in the universe, and we can look at other ways to support that as well.
All right, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Elias, if you could please take the roll call vote on item B, Kingfield synthetic turf replacement.
Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Hobart.
Aye.
Mr. Kudis,
Aye.
Mrs. Dole,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt, Ms. Witsett,
Nay.
Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
Finance items B passes 8-1.
Okay, that then takes us to item Q. Give me a moment. All right, this is the Alexandra Ingram Make the Distinction contract. Do I have a motion for approval? Thank you, Ms. Vogt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Grande. And then questions and comments. Ms. Dole.
Yeah, I did have a question regarding how this will dovetail with the summit that we approved. And I also just want to say that I'm not coming from a place of, I'm in support of this aspect of our strategic plan, the equity, inclusion, and belonging. I just want to, put that out there. But I'm unfortunately uncomfortable with the timing of this contract relative to tonight's meeting. So that's my question/concern, I guess. I'm wondering how we'll dovetail with the summit and then.
I'm not sure what you mean when you say you're uncomfortable with the timing of the contract, but let me finish and then
Sure.
you can tell me. So this board, before you got here, shared with me, and we have data that supports the significant lapse and gaps that exist with the Black and Brown experience. And that's quantifiable.
I'm not
And
debating that. I wanna
Let
make
me
sure.
finish,
Okay.
because this is specifically what is targeted, right? So you're saying that you had a question about it, and you had a question about the timing.
Well, my question was how it dovetails with the summit.
Yeah, but you
that we
also
just
said about the
approved.
timing as well, so I'm gonna talk to both.
Sure.
What has been missing here for quite some time is intentionality in terms of how we're addressing some of the particular outcomes with some particular subgroups. Both organizations play a vital role in creating agency and supporting students in terms of self-confidence and helping navigate and develop problem-solving skills as they are navigating through school. The summit is an opportunity to bring awareness and confidence to that experience, the same way we have affinity groups across the district for a number of demographic groups. We also understand that the Make the Distinction is targeted to a certain population of a young African-American female students. Those students have not found the success that is accustomed in this particular district. They haven't found that success because it's been systemic. Means they just didn't show up in 9th grade with some of those particular deficiencies and challenges that we've known about them. And though there has been effort individually, it hasn't been intentional, hasn't been systemic. So you do have an overrepresentation with discipline. You have an overrepresentation with students identified with special needs. You have an overrepresentation in terms of behavior outcomes. Particular students are struggling to find a connection with adults and with the organization. The same way we scaffold for different tiers is we're scaffolding because each organization comes in and has a particular area in which they focus on. The Make the Distinction, which I've used in the previous district, has been extremely successful for that. The same way, partnership with Black Men at Penn from University of Pennsylvania, which is a group of social workers, home and school visitors, if you will, Dr. McCullough, is targeted the way in which we target instruction. there are particular deficiencies, and it's not, when I talk about deficiencies, I don't want to look at this from a deficit model in terms of what is missing. I think it's opportunities to refine those skills that haven't been afforded. And as a result, anytime you don't have the opportunity to practice a skill, it becomes calcified, right? There's atrophy in that particular process. And we have seen, since I arrived, a cry for help from many students. And some of that cry for help comes in unhealthy behaviors. And we haven't been able to make that connection. This organization, along with others who work very specifically with that particular target audience, is providing that level of service. It's helping to connect and create partnerships among those particular students so that they understand that we are here for a common reason. Here's ways to navigate the educational experience. Here's ways to connect with faculty and staff. Here's how we can better support you academically and socially. If I can bring in 26 dozen different organizations to make up for that, I absolutely would do it. Absolutely would do it. And that is the need for both organizations working some extent independently, depending on the needs of those particular students, but creating an opportunity that opens the door for all to participate. So one program will help to bring all students together, not just this district, but other districts as well that come to that experience. They do it across Pennsylvania. We wanted them to host it here for us to create that space. And we will create the opportunity to go to the larger session that they have where they invite 26 to 27 different school districts with young ladies who have the same opportunities and the same challenges. Make the distinction is distinctive because within that subset, we need to differentiate, right? The same way we talked about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, right? So we provide that for a larger group in the tier 1. And we realize that there's a specific need and particular organizations have a particular set of experiences that are better suited for that experience. So that's why we brought it. Last year, I was not satisfied with the rate of change. There were too many things to do, not enough individuals to be able to do that, though with the best intentions. It's the proverbial not enough fingers to plug up the dam. And we needed to bring additional expertise in that conversation. We are hoping, let me take that back. Hope is not a plan. What we are envisioning and putting into place are systems that doesn't allow us to wait to the sophomore and the junior experience to begin remediating and to building confidence within some of our student body. So this will move its way into the elementary experience that allows that scaffolding to take place. So when you build community with particular student body, you're starting that as early as possible. and then they move with each other throughout the third, fourth, fifth grade experience. It is something that our students have been asking for and that they've been requesting. And I think that as we move into being more deliberate and intentional, we move from talking about things and we move to action steps, and make the distinction is a separate component used to identify a smaller group of students that need a different level of intervention.
That makes sense. Thank you. And again, I just want to be very clear that I am fully supportive of this focus of our strategic plan. And this program sounds like a great program. So that is not why I feel uncomfortable about it. So I want to make that really clear. For me, it's just a matter of the timing of the services beginning and the date of tonight's meeting. So it's just a simple matter of that. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And thank you, Dr. Marseille. Any other questions or comments on this one? I did want to just offer one other, we're making a lot of investments in our students, in our staff and professional development. And it's not something that we have done in this way in the past. And so I've seen or heard, and folks have asked me some questions about some of these. And one that I thought about a lot was with respect to the summit itself. And I know we already approved that one, but you know, there was some commentary around some of the costs, and wow, that's a lot to bear. And is it the right thing to do? You know, would I want the school bearing that, you know, that investment if it were my child, and so forth? And I would just ask folks to think a little bit about that. You know, when we, and Suprasia, while she was here, was talking about some of the things that the students, for example, in speech and debate are going to. Those are not cheap, and the families pay for those. That is maybe nationals, they don't. I'm not positive about that, but I know my daughter's in speech and debate, and that's part of the reason they're holding a fundraiser, is because every one of those tournaments, even the local ones, are quite expensive, and a lot of them are not local. There are a lot of students that would not be able to participate in things like that if we didn't support them and intentionally support them, perhaps in different ways for the different subgroups, as you talked about. So while some of us might be able to look at that and say we shouldn't bear it as a district, that is not true for all of our students, and it's an investment in them, and it's investment into us when we support our students in that way. And again, I know I didn't mean that in response at all, Mr. Lay, to anything that you said, because I know you and I've talked about this, and I know you're completely on board. And appreciate your comments.
I want to say this too, because I'm glad we're talking this conversation, because I think individuals have been asking questions with respects to expenditures, rightfully so. The cost of inaction significantly greater than the cost of action. And I say that because it's not like there's new money. When we discussed this, I didn't come with a money tree from my previous district that had $150+ million budget. I definitely didn't come for anything from Lower Marion that the number is to the moon. What I did bring was a commitment to rethink about expenditures. Rethink about where we're investing dollars. And investing dollars is simply, where's our most valuable resource? Most valuable resource are the educators and the adults who are in front of our children, who have the pleasure of supporting them. And the reality is, for probably good reason, that the level of investment in that was significantly different than the way in which I view it, in the way in which I'm accustomed to providing those particular experiences. So yes, we are reclaiming, reallocating, and reshifting in terms of providing our staff with those experiences. You know, if I get one more inquiry about a staff member saying, why are you sending us here and is there a catch? One more inquiry about, we've always been told no, and we've always been told there's no money. So what's going on and where's the money coming from? Because we've been told for years, right? And I'm not talking about 3 or 4 years. I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm talking about further back. There is no new money. It's a new way of thinking. It's a reinvestment for that process. Yes, I understand that we want to look for new revenue streams, Dr. Grande. And we're going to explore those new revenue streams and build partners and see how we can offset that. And I say that because, you know, we have multi-million-dollar renovations to our athletic program that we haven't paid attention to. We can't afford it all. We can collaborate with the community to do that, but I will, and so will my team, remain steadfast and unapologetic with all due respect, and you never want to say that because something else is going to come up, that I am more intentional and deliberate with resources going to support staff. So it is unconscionable when individuals tell me, I've always been told no about these particular sets of supplies. I've always been told no when I wanted to go to a professional learning experience. Been here for 15 years and this is the first time. Those type of statements, I don't want to happen under my watch. And we have a staff who has been thirsty, who has all the skill sets necessary, and the commitment and the drive to do this 10-year look. And it would behoove us as administrative team to do our efforts to provide them with the resources that they need. And yes, there is a significant reimagining of our work, but reimagining it also means realigning our expenditures and spending more time in those particular areas as well. So you'll continue to see that. You will continue to ask those questions. We will continue to share with you what we believe to be the value added in those efforts. Some of those are quantifiable in terms of key performance indicators, good questions to ask. To what extent is this investment going to yield a particular outcome? In some areas, we can do that quantifiably for you. And others, we can say, well, this is how it has built confidence. This is how it builds self-esteem. This is how it's built efficacy. Here's surveys that talk about since individuals have participated, they feel this way. And those two, when we begin to share and we lay out the strategic plan for the board, I think that you will be very satisfied in terms of 3 years from now, we started this. We shared, we like to see these outcomes. If we don't bring it to you, your job is to bring it to us. To what extent is this bearing fruit? And do we need to think differently or move in a different direction? So I want to share that because it's come up. Dr. Conley and I have entertained a number of conversations, surprisingly, with staff And when we say, come join us with us, they're like, what do we need to do and why? As though there's something else to be done. So I'm really happy in terms of opening the door. And I'd like to say yes, more than they've been told no in the past.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Marson. Yep. All right, with that, let's go ahead then, Ms. Elias, and take the roll call vote on item Q, the Alexander Ingram Make the Distinction contract.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Kudis,
Aye.
Mrs. Dolay,
Nay.
Mrs. Vogt. Ms. Wetzel,
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
and Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
Finance items Q passes 8-1.
Okay, thank you. Then moving then to the other section, we have two items. We have the Delaware County Community College trustee appointments. And we also have the election of the Delaware County Intermediate Unit Board members. Do I have a motion for approval? Thank you, Ms. Vogt. Do I have a second? Mr. Kudis? Any questions or comments? Ms. Elias, if you'll please take the roll call vote.
Ms. Witset.
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Kudis,
Aye.
Mrs. Dolay,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt, and Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
Other items A and B passes 9-0.
Thank you. That takes us then to audience recognition, response to any other items this evening for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Would anyone who would like to address the board for items not on the agenda? If not, do we have any old business this evening? Any new business this evening? Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.